Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the We're Having a Good Time podcast. My name is Dusty Slay, and I am your host. What a hot podcast. We're having a good time. I got shows coming up. Let's just go ahead and say those. I'll be in Hartford, Connecticut at the Funny Bone next weekend. I'll be there on the 3rd and the 4th of October. And then I got just a few shows here and there. I mean, because of, I'm doing these theaters, and my Columbus, Ohio show got canceled and, not canceled necessarily. The venue closed down. My October is looking a little light show-wise, which I don't really mind, to be honest with you. I do love that I have the club date in Hartford, because that should be 4 shows. So it'll get a lot of reps in there. I like that. And next year I'm doing more club dates. I like the theaters, but I am missing the reps. I mean, in a way, I'm like, I go do comedy on Friday and Saturday, and then I come home and I go, the shows are where I practice. I mean, that's how I practice comedy. And I'm like, I feel like I need to be working it at all times. I need to be in some high pressure situations. I do think that's why people move to New York City and LA, is because, they're around, supposedly the best comics in the world all the time, right? So you're really working it and you're being challenged all the time. And I wonder sometimes if I am not in enough of those situations. I like what I'm doing comedy-wise. I like the shows that I'm doing, but sometimes I wonder, do I need more? Do I need more challenging situations? Because sometimes if I'm in New York or LA, I don't do a lot of showcases while I'm there, but sometimes I do. And I do feel very intimidated by lineups, even though I do fine. I do great in those situations, but it is nice sometimes to go, I'm feeling challenged here. I'm feeling like these guys are very funny. I got to step it up. I got to bring the heat. And in Nashville, I'm so comfortable at the club that even, I'm not saying I'm the best on the lineup every time, but I'm saying, let's say that I'm not the best, or I'm not second best, or I'm not third best. I'm not necessarily bothered by it, because it's my home club and I love it, and it doesn't bother me. I feel like sometimes I need to be in more situations where it does bother me. It does bother me to go, ooh, I was not even third best tonight. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but as a comic, you want to be the best, right? I never, as far as the best, like the conversation that I had last week, like the greatest comic of all time sort of thing, I don't feel like I'm ever going to be in the running for the greatest comic of all time, nor do I really want to be, because it is all opinion and up to interpretation. Like, I remember asking my dad as a kid who the strongest man in the world was, and at the time, like, Bill Kazmaier had one who lived in Auburn, that I thought was very cool. Oh, that's interesting. That really leads me into what I want to talk about. Well, I'm glad I said that. But my dad said, well, Bill Kazmaier has won the competition, the world's strongest man, but he said, a man could be strong in, one particular area, but then someone else could be stronger than him in this area. So there's no way to know actually who is the strongest at any particular time. And that's how I feel about comedy. Right? I mean, somebody may be the greatest right now. We may remember someone as the greatest in the past. And oftentimes our memories remember things better than they were. Someone will say Robin Williams was the best of all time. And then another person will say, well, he stole a bunch of jokes. And then I go, I never liked Robin Williams' stand-up. I thought Robin Williams was an amazing actor, very funny, but I never liked Robin Williams' stand-up. Just not into it. I'm not saying he never had funny moments, and I'm sure that if you were at the Comedy Store or the Improv way back in the day and Robin Williams took the stage, it was mind-blowing, but I never was like, ooh, that's my guy. And there were a lot of comics that people mentioned that I failed to mention, and that was basically my whole point, is that there is so many comics that you could go through. Like someone mentioned Mike Birbiglia. I had a real Mike Birbiglia phase that I went through. I think his first couple of albums were really good. And then he kind of and then he had that movie. I forget what the movie was called, where it was kind of about his life. Really enjoyed that movie because I was just kind of inching my way into road comedy at that time. And I thought, well, that movie was very fun. And all those movies, they have to be sped up in a way, just like that Pete Holmes TV show about stand-up. It all is pretty unrealistic because it all happens so fast. And I'm sure it is similar to their journey, but it all happens way fast. Like I remember watching the Pete Holmes show, and we're supposed to believe that he's struggling in that show when I'm like, oh, you're getting every opportunity under the sun so fast. Most of us, most of my friends in comedy and most of my career, I've never done gigs, and then some comic was like, I'd like to take you on the road with me. And then my calendar suddenly lined up. It is a constant grind to get gigs. My friend Chris Killian was someone that took me on the road early on. But even that was a situation to where I was already passed by the Comedy Zone chain of clubs, and Chris was already a headliner at the Comedy Zone. So it was like, he was like, hey, I like you, I like your comedy, and you're passed by the Comedy Zone. Would you like to do my dates? But had I not put in the work to be passed by Comedy Zone, it may not, may not have worked out that way. But so, these movies where you see about stand-up comedy, it's all happening so fast. And there may be some people that it happened that fast, but I just don't think that's the reality. But I think a movie or TV show about comedy that showed the real grind would probably be quite boring, especially my grind. Because, I lived in Charleston where we were getting to do stand-up comedy maybe twice a week. On a great week, maybe 4 times. But, in New York City, you could do 4 times a night or more. So, when I say I started in 2008, I know I've said this all a million times, but when I say I started in 2008, to somebody that started in New York City in 2008, they would likely be far above me because of the amount of stage time that they could get. Whereas my TV show about my early days would be me doing an open mic at a place called Big Gun Burger on Wednesday, and then the rest of the week is me selling pesticides and waiting tables. So that's hardly that exciting of a TV show. Unless the TV show about selling pesticides is amazing, which I think it could be. I think it's a great concept, but it just can't be mainly about the journey of stand-up. But a TV show about selling pesticides, amazing. Especially if you knew what I actually went through on a day-to-day basis. And if you're a listener of this podcast for a long time, you do know what I went through selling pesticides. But today, I've been kind of talking about this, and I don't know that I've ever went through what I actually did when I worked at Office Depot. I don't know that I've ever did that kind of journey. Maybe I have. Maybe it was years ago, but I got a little criticism from people about some of the things that I talked to last week. There was a human being that was brutally murdered, and I talked about it on here. And some people, not very many, I don't know how many, but some people emailed me about it and told me they were very upset that I mentioned this person and very upset that I called them a good Christian, even though they themselves admitted that they were not Christians, therefore not really knowing what a good Christian versus a bad Christian would be. I've often said, I think there's a C.S. Lewis quote where when you see a person that's bad and they are a Christian, it's like, yeah, they may be bad, but imagine what they would be like without God. And then if you see a good person who's not a Christian, you go, but imagine how good they could be if they were serving the Lord. And so, that's just it. No one's perfect. I most certainly am not perfect, but I am a better person now that I'm, trying to do the things that Jesus said. It's hard. I mean, oftentimes people criticize Christians when they found out that they've done something bad. They go, oh, always these Christians, hiding, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you're a Christian and you're doing bad things, you do hide it, but you may be trying to be better. I know that I'm always trying to be a better person. I don't always do the best things, especially if you see me driving in the car. I'm a lunatic sometimes. I may not yell at people, but I say bad things about people in other cars for no reason, knowing full well that if we both stopped at the gas station, went inside and bumped into each other, I would be as nice as possible to them. But in the car, I hate everyone. I hate everyone that's in another car. And that's not a Christian way to be, but I am like that. I don't know what happens to me in a car. It just, and I get on the internet and I judge people and, I judge other comedians. I I don't know that I'm a gossip per se, but I don't know. I guess that's exactly what it is. But, I'll get together with other comedians and we'll talk about other comedians. And it's not a good thing to do. But I think that's part of the thing about being a comedian is that you have this observational eye. You're always paying attention. You're always trying to break things down. And I think that's why some comics get very political, because our mind is kind of geared up to be analyzing and breaking things down. And I think that we have that ability, and you have that ability to do it in a funny way or not a funny way. So, but all that to say, I thought, you know what? I used to like to tell stories and talk about my life, and I just thought, maybe I'll try to do a little bit more of that. I've never been so driven by views as far as my podcast goes, because there is nothing I can do. I can only do what I can do. I sit here in a chair in front of my Steve Martin poster and my two horses and another Steve Martin poster that you can't even see that way. And then my YouTube plaque of 100,000 subscribers, signaling to YouTube that I am excited about that accomplishment and hope that you will push my videos into the algorithms. But at the same time, we're just having a good time here. The podcast, the original intention of this podcast was simply this. I had very little traction on the road, but I was headlining gigs, and I wanted to tell people about my podcast from show to show. That way, there was a way for them to tune in to me, listen to me, and then the next time I'm in their town, they would know it because they would be listening to the podcast, and hopefully by that point we would have formed a bond with each other. And I don't know if that's happening, but I'm committed to two things: doing a podcast and trying to be funny while being interesting, and also coming up with something new every week to talk about while I do it alone. And I'm also committed to wearing a new hat every podcast. I don't know if anyone's noticed that I do that. And it's not a new hat. I'm not buying a new hat each time. It's just a different hat. This hat, I don't know what this hat is. I think it's an old hotel, but who knows? It's very old. I don't wear it out because I can't even fasten the back of it. But it wears well for a podcast. Also, before I get into this, I did a Reacts video with my friend Connor Larson, and it was the first one. And me and Connor both admit, as it's being put out, that it is not our finest work. But we did 2 episodes before putting that one out where we had technical difficulties to the point of the sound didn't work from our mics, or the camera angle itself wasn't good. And so we finally got all that down, and now we can see it and we get some honest feedback. So if you see that, go check that video out and leave a comment. Let me know what you think, even if it's bad. I don't mind. I just want to get some honest feedback on it and see things that you'd like. There already is a lot of notes, and we're already taking those. Connor's doing all the work with that. He's coming over here, and we're filming, but Connor's doing all the work. And I appreciate Connor for that. So we're just trying to make the best thing possible. We don't have a crew. It's me and Connor. Crews are hard. It's hard to get a crew together. But I'm just trying to do some different stuff, just some extra content, some bonus stuff out there. And the shows are hot. The shows on the road are hot. But back in 2003, no, that's not correct. My very first note I made for myself was wrong. In 2001, I joined the Army. There's a podcast that I did about that, and there's a video on YouTube about that. And then I did not get into the Army. I got arrested, and I didn't make it in. And I could have still gone in lieu of, in lieu of probation or all these different things. I got my sentencing for an open beer at 18 and a little bit of weed was 2 years unsupervised probation, 9 months without a driver's license, $700 in fines, and 40 hours of community service. And I think that was it. I think that was what I had to do. But I thought it was pretty severe punishment. And the probation was basically that I didn't have to take drug test every month. I didn't have to meet with a probation officer, which was very nice. I was told that is a thing that my lawyer got me. But I had I think it was a 3-month suspended jail sentence. So if I got in trouble within that 2 years, I would go to jail for 3 months, was what I was being told. So, prior to that arrest, I was going to the Army. I was working at Western Sizzlin', and I had a crush on a girl. And rather than just being a man and asking her on a date, I was very frustrated with my life and decided to join the Army. So I was going to do that, and I was just going to kind of roll out of there in a blaze of glory. But instead, I got arrested. And then there was a bit of time in between getting arrested. This is always a little fuzzy for me on the timeline. But in between getting arrested and actually going to court, I did have my driver's license, but the Army was out. So I bought a trailer that I grew up in for $1,000. And me and my buddy started moving into this trailer. I was working at Papa John's. For whatever reason, at Papa John's, I was already not allowed to be a delivery guy anymore. I used to be a delivery guy at Papa John's, but when I went back, I guess my driving record was not good enough for me to be a delivery driver. And this was even, without the suspended license. So I was, making pizzas and working on the inside, which was still fun. I was having a good time. I was answering the phones, making pizza. It was a good time. And me and my friend John moved into the trailer. and we got settled in and we were having a good time. And then I went to court and I might have even started the job at Office Depot. Matter of fact, I think I had started the job at Office Depot as well. A lot of this is really fuzzy because this was over 20 years ago, but I had also started this job at Office Depot. After not getting into the Army, my mom was already working at Office Depot. And so my mom also listens to the podcast. So this is uncomfortable for me to even talk about. But my mom was working at Office Depot. So they got me a job, but I had to take a drug test. And so I failed to get into the Army. So immediately I fell back into my old ways of smoking weed all the time. So I was already smoking weed, but now I've been offered this job and I got to take a drug test. And I'm like, oh man, this is not looking good for me. Because at the time, my mom, prior to the Army, my mom knew I was into weed, but she didn't know that I started back after not getting into the Army, because I was kind of telling a lie at that time, and I wanted everybody to know that, yes, I got arrested for weed, but now because I saw that it could get me in trouble, I decided to clean up my life. But I got arrested. I had nothing going on in my life. My frustration that led me to want to leave my hometown was now 100% back. Now I made such a big effort to get out of my hometown and now was trapped again. So weed was my escape. So I had to take the drug test, and I bought one of those drinks. It's the only time I've ever done this, where you kind of buy one of those drinks. I don't even remember what I did, but I think you just drink it and then you take the drug test. And it worked. I passed the drug test, so I got the job at Office Depot. And then I went to court. And then when the court thing came out, it was all laid on the table, and I no longer had a driver's license. And I think my friend John could see the writing on the wall, so he was like, I'm moving out. And it might have been that, or it might have been that he moved in with me and I was having people over every day and we were smoking out the trailer, and John wasn't into weed. That could have been it. I don't know. But either way, John moved out. So now here I am, about a year out of high school, and I'm in a trailer and I got a suspended license. I'm on probation. I'm high every day. And now I don't know, and I'm alone in my trailer. I don't know how I'm going to get to work. And a friend of mine comes to me and presents the idea. He says, I need a place to live. My parents have kicked me out. And he said, I want to propose the idea that you let me live here for free. And keep in mind, the trailer was paid off. My lot rent was $120 a month, and that included water. And he was like, I'll live here for free, and I'll drive you to work every day and pick you up every day. And that sounded like a pretty good idea to me. And he's like, I'll sell weed, and that's how I'll make money. And I go, okay. And I go, all right, well, I'll accept that offer, but I also will counter. I didn't use this terminology, but this is basically, I said, I'll counter. You're allowed to sell weed out of my trailer as long as you smoke weed with me for free. So that was our arrangement. And I said, now if this is our deal, you got to be on top of it. I can't be late to work because you're not here to pick me up. And I don't want to be sitting around after I get off work with no ride. I need you to be there. So he said, okay, deal. So that's what we did going forward. My friend would drive me to work every day, pick me up every day. And most of the time we would get high before we went to work. And then when he would pick me up, we were smoking blunts and joints back in the day. And he would meet me at Office Depot with a rolled blunt, and we would get in the car and we would drive home. And it was great. My friend had a Isuzu Rodeo, and he had 17-inch rims on it, and he had a system. So he would pull up in the parking lot looking very fresh, and it'd have the bass going, and it was like, so I looked pretty cool, to be honest. I mean, I really, it was less of a suspended license and more of a chauffeur. I don't know how to say it. A chauffeur. I don't know. It's like I had a service going on. Like my friend would pick me up in style, and we would get high on the way home. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was, of course, we were going back to a trailer in practically Beauregard, which was a small town or community outside of Opelika, but it was pretty sweet. And then usually there were other people hanging out at the house, girls from time to time, mainly dudes, but we would be partying. I mean, we had a PlayStation 2 at the trailer for a while. We were playing a lot of Tekken Tag, a lot of Grand Theft Auto 3. I mean, it was a lot of fun. We would sit in that trailer. I remember having Tekken Tag tournaments where we would, we might have 10 dudes in the room and we're all smoking weed and cigarettes in the trailer while playing Tekken. It was amazing. And the trailer park was safe enough to where we all felt good living there, but also shady enough to where none of the neighbors were calling the police, I mean, a lot of times the neighbors were also at the trailer playing. It's like nobody called the police on the trailer park. I don't think the police ever came. I lived there for 2 years, and I don't think they ever came because no one was calling them. Sure, my trailer got broken into, but that was later. For a while, we had a really great setup. And so I mainly, that was what was going on in my personal life, but I wanted to talk a bit about, working at Office Depot. So all this is going on. This is going on in my personal life. And again, some of the timeline is skewed here because I feel like I remember driving to Office Depot for a little while before I actually lost my license, because it was kind of like this. I was going to be shipped off in late August of 2001. And so I would have been in boot camp September 11th, 2001. I signed up for the Army in a relative time of peace. And so, my what do you call him? My recruiter told me, he said, you're going to get shipped off in a month. So that would have been late August. So we can say this was happening late July. So I would say I got arrested in late July. And then my court date came after my ship-off date. So I that's why I didn't go. So you could say there were a good 2 months at the very least in between getting arrested and actually going to court. So I was working at Office Depot for a time, and I was driving myself for a time, because I remember early on even driving a guy, because I would pick him up. He lived at the Golden Cherry Motel, which was a place you could rent by the week, I believe, but also a motel that you could rent by the hour. There was an old movie with Sally Fields, and I don't know why I can't think of the name, but it was filmed in Opelika. I think she won an Oscar. Norma Ray was the name of it, and she was either staying in the Golden Cherry Motel or she was prostituting herself out to a man in that hotel, a motel, something like that. But John was living there, and John was an older guy. John told me that he used to play in drums in a big band and swing band, and he was recovering from a heart attack when I first met him, so he was coming off of cigarettes, but as time went on, he slowly got back into smoking, and John would take a lot of smoke breaks, and he also had a lot of sores on his arm. He had very greasy hair and bad teeth, but overall, I liked John, and he trained me to be a stalker at Office Depot. And I would get high almost every day and go into Office Depot. But, it's a sort of thing where you get high before you take a shower, and then you put on your work clothes and you go in. So you don't smell like weed. You may look high, but I was also 19. Who doesn't look high at 19? That's what I've always told myself. And as I was working there, I was growing my hair out. I had my hair, I think, basically shaved, and then I was growing it out to having long hair for the first time. So I would try to slick my hair back before going into work. I, for the majority of my life, knew nothing about hair. I knew nothing about styling hair. There was no one in my life teaching me about style. So I didn't really think about product, that I could just put product in my hair to hold it back. So what I would do was I would slick it back when I got out of the shower, and then I would tie a bandana around my head, and I would wear a bandana, and I would go into work with the bandana, not trying to be cool, maybe a little bit, but it was mainly so I could keep it on there for as long as possible, so that when I took it off, there was some sort of pushed back hair. I was training my hair to go back. And I remember my boss eventually telling me not to wear the bandana into work with the uniform because I might look like, a troublemaker. Which honestly is a bit of a cool compliment. I think that I could look like a troublemaker, and I like that. But I worked there. I was a stalker. And then as time would go on, people would get fired or quit, and I would start doing those jobs. I used to just be the stalker, and there was a computer guy, a furniture guy, a receiving manager, copy and print people, and there was cashiers. But as time went on, slowly, like the furniture lady quit, and I just kind of took over that position. They didn't hire a new furniture person. They didn't hire a stalker to take my place. I was just now the stalker and the furniture person. And then some days the computer guy wouldn't be there, so I would be kind of the default computer guy, even though I really didn't know anything about computers. And then I learned to run the cash register. I could run the cash register. And then as time went on, I became forklift certified. And so for a little while, and then later, the receiving manager, Roger, that position went away. The receiving manager position went away. So Roger got moved to a different position as a manager. He stayed a manager, but was no longer the receiving manager. And then I took over his job as the receiver. So I had been there about a year, and I went from just being the stalker to being able, I would go in at 6 a.m., I would wake up at 5 a.m. and I would get high, and then I would go into work at 6 a.m. We didn't open until 8. It was perfect because I could be high for 2 hours before the store even opened, and everyone just assumed I was tired. So I would go in at 6 a.m. I would unload the truck. The truck would come in. I would unload the truck with the forklift. I would check everything in with the little scan gun that they had. So I would make sure all the inventory was there that was supposed to be there. And then I would load it all onto carts. And then I would assume my role as the stocker, and I would stock all the products that I just checked in. Meanwhile, I would also help people with furniture. If they wanted to buy a desk, I would show them the desk, and then they would say, okay, I want to buy this desk. So I would go in the back, and all of these, with the forklift stuff, there was always supposed to be 2 people. There was one person to drive the forklift and lift it up, and then there was supposed to be another person to ride that up to get the furniture. But we were so short-staffed that it would take forever if I had to wait on someone. So I would go and I would drive the forklift to where the furniture was at. I would lift it way up to the top of the shelf, and then I would leave it there. And then I would climb the shelf up to where I needed to get the furniture. I would push the big heavy piece of furniture onto the lift, and then I would climb back down. I would lower the forklift, load the furniture onto a cart, push it up to the register, where I would then ring the customer up and then take the furniture out to the car for these people. I was a one-man show. The only thing I couldn't do was run the copy and print center, but I could help some with some of that stuff. I was doing all that. And when I got my review, I got a 10-cent raise. I went from making, $7 an hour to $7.10 an hour. That was the kind of raise I got for the amount of work I was able to do for that store. And Roger, who was the receiving manager, I always got along pretty well with Roger until he became the floor manager. Because when he was the receiving manager, he wasn't up in my business. But now Roger's working on the floor, and we would have to, there would be boxes in the overhead directly, like say you're on the pen aisle. Every pen that you see on the shelf, things are a little different now, but back then, everything you saw on the shelf, everything had a SKU number. And then, so you would look up in the overhead and you would go, okay, we need this pen. So you would look up and find that SKU number, and there would be a box labeled with that SKU number, and you would bring that box down, and then you would open it up and you would stock the shelf. And if you didn't empty the box, you would count how many pens were left, and then you would adjust the number on the box, and you would say, well, there was 10 pens, but I loaded 4 to the shelf, so now there's 6. And you would mark it as 6, and then you would put it back in the overhead, and usually using a ladder. Some cases, the shelves were low enough, you could just kind of reach it with your hand. But most cases, you needed a ladder. But this is what I did, and I had a good system, and I had things marked and labeled really well. Now, I wasn't the only stocker, but I was the main stocker. And so Roger wasn't in my business when he was a receiver, but then he started working the floor, and it was now Roger's job to, kind of see what was going on. We went through quite a few managers, and there was a Roger time. There was we had a guy named Ricky, and Ricky had one leg, and Ricky was but he had a fake leg, and I'm not making fun of him for having one leg, but Ricky was an extreme alcoholic. Like, he would get in his truck when he left and start drinking right away. And I don't know if that makes someone an extreme alcoholic, but it sure seemed like it at that time. I guess you could say that, I was also getting in my car and getting high right away. So I don't know. So we went through many managers, but Roger was the most irritating to me. There was a guy named Jim that it was more irritating to everybody else, but I liked Jim. I forget the main guy that was there the whole time. He's the guy that was my mom's friend, that Charles was his name. He's the guy that hired me. And then Mark was the store manager. And Mark was a bit of a weak guy. He was big and he seemed like a strong guy, but he was a bit of a weak guy when it came to the customers. He would do whatever they wanted. I got a little story for that. But Roger came onto the floor one day, and Roger came and got me out of the back where I'm probably, I'm doing one of my many jobs. And he came and got me. He goes, let me show you something real quick. And I go, okay. And he takes me up and he goes, and he points to a box. He goes, you see that box up there? This box is right here on the shelf, but it's supposed to be on the next aisle over. And I go, gee, and I really kind of blew up on the guy. And I reached up with my hand, I grabbed the box, and I took it over to the other shelf, and I put it up there. I was like, it's that easy. This is what you drug me out of my job to do. And so then they had a meeting with me. All of the management had me in a room, and they said, and this is after I'm already doing many jobs here. And they go, and this was very funny on my part, but they go, they were getting mad at me and whatever, and they go, we could write you up for insubordination. And I go, I don't even know what that means. And I didn't. And they explained it to me, and I go, yeah, okay, whatever. Whatever, guys. It's like I'm doing everything at this place. And you know what? I think what it was, to be honest with you, I think I had quit smoking weed at that point. I was so high all the time, and then I quit smoking weed, and weed brought out a little meekness in me, where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna put my head down and I'm just gonna do my job. But when I wasn't high, I was like, nah, I'm not tolerating this. I'm not putting up with this crap. And there was another guy named Brian that worked there. He was going to college at Auburn, and me and him were buddies. I wish I could find Brian. I have no idea where Brian's at these days. There was another girl named Shannon, and we were all three friends. We did some overnights where you would go in and redo a bunch of shelving and stuff like that. And those were all fun because, we'd get high before we went in, and then on lunch break, we'd go back to my trailer and get high and then come back and work. And that stuff was great. It was a lot of fun. And we just do our jobs, and I loved it. I loved the overnights because I remember I had Nintendo. This was towards the end of me working there because I had a Nintendo GameCube and I was driving again. I had already gotten my license back, and I would get off work at 7 in the morning, and then I would go home and get high and play Nintendo GameCube. I would play The Sims on the GameCube for a couple hours before going to sleep. It was great. I was really, really cool. And, but I would eventually transfer to Charleston. When I moved to Charleston, I would transfer through Office Depot. But there was one incident, there are other details of this time in my life that I do want to share one day. I've never really shared. The book deal that I got that I'm working on, which is the snail's pace of a process. It's the slowest thing that I've ever done in my life. I'm doubting at times if it's even going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to find a different way to just share this because it's kind of I don't think it'll be that surprising to a lot of people, but it's a secret time of my life that I never really share. And I'd love to get into those details because I think it's very interesting and fun. And I think it could be inspirational in a way. But but there was one day I was working, and this guy comes in. I guess he had bought a chair the day before, and it wasn't satisfactory to him. And this guy comes in, and I find these details out later, but he comes in. My mom's working the customer service desk, and this guy comes in just yelling at my mom and just really going at her, I guess. And my mom comes into the break room and she's crying, and I don't handle that sort of stuff well. I'm not cool about it. I've yelled at several people in public when dealing with my mom. I don't even know that my mom is always in the right, but I can't handle it. And I yell at people. And so my mom comes in the back crying, and I ask her what happened, and she told me that about this guy. And so I go out looking for this guy, and my manager, Mark, is helping this guy load a chair into the back. Apparently this guy's demands were met, and now Mark's helping him load a chair in it. And I go, I just want you to know that lady that you were yelling out, that's my mom, and you made her cry. And I said that, to that guy in front of my boss. And that was it. But I came out like, my manager later told me, you came out like you were ready to fight that guy. But that guy but Mark comes into the break room later, and he starts yelling at me. And me and Mark start yelling at each other. And Mark And Mark says, he's like, you came out like you were going to fight that guy. And I go, well, you wouldn't let anybody talk to your mom like that. And Mark goes, my mom's dead. And I go, well, I'm sorry about that. And that's always like such a cop-out. It's like, don't bring that BS into an argument. Oh, my mom's dead. It's like, well, listen, I'm sorry that your mom's dead, but let's picture that your mom's alive and somebody's yelling at your mom. You're not going to let them talk to her like that. And Mark was a black guy. Black guys love their moms. Mark's not going to let someone talk to his mom like that, right? Okay? And that was my whole point. And Mark goes, well, you're fired. And I go, all right, well, whatever. And then my mom comes back there and she's like trying to calm us down. And I go, well, he just fired me. And then my mom starts crying again. And then Mark hires me back. And then, me and Mark were cool most of the time. I say Mark was a weak guy, but I only mean with the customers. Mark was a nice guy. Mark was dating a lady who was a mom's with a guy I went to high school with, and they put out a rap video. They were called the South Mob Clique. I'm pretty sure that's what the name was. And 3 of the 4 guys in the group I went to high school with, and I watched their video, and they used Mark's SUV in the video. All right, Mark was a nice guy. I just mean when it came to customers, he just did whatever they wanted him to do. And I really didn't like it. And he also loved Roger. And that was the big problem. Roger, listen, I hope Roger doesn't listen to the podcast because I think Roger was a nice guy. But he was a bit of a weaselly guy. He was, like a... And listen, I'm Christian, and I'm not trying to pick on, but he was a Christian guy, like kind of this, I don't know, older Southern Christian man. I don't know how to describe it, but kind of some youth pastor vibes. No offense if you're a youth pastor. I think there are some youth pastors that listen, but I don't know, a little weaselly. And it always bothered me because I've always been a Christian, but there's something about this kind of guy that really bothered me, like I'm just doing the right thing sort of stuff where it's like, all right, yeah, you're doing the right thing, but take it easy a little bit. Try to lighten up a bit. And he always bothered me. I don't know if he was mad that I took his position as the receiver, but it's like, buddy, you kept the pay. I stayed at $7 an hour, even though I'm now doing your job and honestly, probably doing a better job. I was a Renaissance man in the Office Depot. And, but Mark was good enough to me that in the end, Mark, signed my transfer. He's probably happy to get rid of me, but he signed my transfer to go and work at the Charleston Office Depot when I moved there, which I also moved to Charleston for the same salary. And I'll tell you this, I was at the Charleston Office Depot and I worked there for a couple of months and then we moved locations. And when we moved locations, that's when they realized I could do the receiver job because they had a receiver at the Office Depot that I went to, but they needed someone that could do it at the new location that we were moving to because the old store was still open, but we had shipments coming in. And I was like, well, I can do it. So I took over that job and I was like, they named me Employee of the Month. Within a couple of months of being there at that. I never won Employee of the Month at the Opelika Office Depot, even though I was like an extreme employee. Sure, I was high every day, but I was doing a good job. Sometimes people act like being high makes you not a good employee. I'm like, that was when I was doing my best work when I was high. But I did love the Office Depot. I used to read the newspaper in there every day. This was before smartphones. The newspaper would be in the back, and when I would take my lunch break, I would go sit in the office and eat food and read the newspaper, mainly the comics section. And Dilbert always made me think of Office Depot and what we had going on. So I would cut out the Dilbert comic and put it on the refrigerator back there. And I don't know if people liked it, but I thought, this is fun. This is it feels like relatable to what we got going on here. And I had a blast in that time in my life. I dated a couple of girls that worked there, but one girl I kind of dated for a little while. She started dating me before I got my license back, and she would drive me around a little bit, and she was going to college at Auburn. Very smart. She graduated summa cum laude, I think, and I went to her graduation. Me and some of my flunky stoner buddies all went to her graduation, and we had a lot of fun. And you know, she would come and hang out at the trailer. I always thought that it was funny, though. I don't know where she was from, but you know, like from America. I don't mean she was but I don't know what state she was actually from. But she was going to college at Auburn, and I feel like her family probably had a bit of money, and she's like dating a guy living in a trailer with no driver's license. I always thought, I was like, geez, that's got to be a low point for you. And I always wonder about some of these people too. You know, like people I dated or people that I used to hang out with, if they know about me now as a comic, if they ever watch things, if they ever listen to the podcast, because it's like I looked, you know, much different. Actually, during that time, I probably looked more similar to how I look now than almost my whole time in Charleston. I had, you know, when I was living in the trailer working at Office Depot, I had long hair. And I had a mustache and a little chin goatee. I didn't think I could grow a beard. But, you know, and I also did a lot of remodeling and a lot of resets at that Office Depot. So when we had signage we would have to hang that would be way up high in the sky, and I would write my name on the top of it. Or if I was up in the top moving boxes around, I would write my name in various places. And the Office Depot moved after I moved. They moved locations too. And my mom moved with them, and she said that people in there said my name was written everywhere in there. They saw my name everywhere in there. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was marking my territory in here. And we used to like to do overnights. We like to do, like, we would have to page people on the overhead. I think nowadays they have a, like earphone system where you just kind of contact people. But back then you'd have to pick up the phone and call people, and it would go, you'd go, Brian, call on line 1, Brian, call on line 1. But me and Brian, he started it. I did copy him, but I thought it was fun. And we started really dragging it out, like instead of going, Brian, call on line 1, it'd go, Brian Thompson, you have a telephone call on line number 1. We would like drag it out. I mean, that was just our fun way. We thought it was so fun to, just drag it out as much as we could. That's how we entertained each other. And I remember one time I was real hungover, and I went in the early shift, and I was running the cash register that day. And some people would, they would have like business accounts, or their account would be tax-free for whatever reason. And you would have to call a number to get a number to type into the computer to approve them. Very complicated process. And I remember one day I was really hungover and I felt really bad. And if you're hungover and you feel bad in your stomach, you can get high and your stomach will feel better. But it doesn't mean you're better at your job. It makes you more confused. Being a hungover destroys your brain. When I quit drinking, I got so much smarter so fast. Being drunk and being hungover destroys your brain. It makes you like a complete idiot. You may do it and still be very smart, but if you weren't doing it, you would be smarter. And then weed on top of that makes you confused. But I woke up and I felt real sick, so I got high. And then I went to work and was just a mess. And then I was the only cashier that day. And I remember I had a tax ID person, and I was just having a hard time getting the the person to answer the phone or what, but whatever was happening was taking a long time, and the line kept backing up. And on a normal day, I'd probably just handle myself just fine. But for whatever reason, I was just so confused and so spaced out, and I was really stressing, and nobody would. I kept paging for people to come help me, and then I basically was yelling at my manager. Now that I think of it, Mark really put up with a lot of crap from me. I wish I could find Mark. I'm sorry I called him weak. Mark was a nice guy. He reminded me of my brother-in-law a little bit. They had similar body shape. And so I think that's why I felt so comfortable getting mad at Mark. And Mark really put up with a lot from me. But I was so mad at him. He just wouldn't come up and help me. I was like, what are you doing back there, Mark? Get up here, buddy. I need your help. And I just remember being so stressed. Oh, and one day, Bill Kazmaier came in to buy a desk. And it was very exciting for me. World's strongest man, Bill Kazmaier, came in to buy a desk. And I went out. I carried the desk outside for Bill. I carried the desk for the world's strongest man. And then together, me and him lifted it in the back of his truck. And that was a lot of fun. And there was an old lady who would come in and buy bookshelves, and she would hire me to put them together for her. I remember making an extra 40 or $50 by going over to this old lady's house and putting bookshelves together for her. Very easy bookshelves. And I remember there was a young girl, she was an Asian girl that came in and bought a desk, and I believe she was a foreign exchange student of some sort, come to college at Auburn. And she needed someone to deliver, and I delivered the desk to her. And I felt like she was giving me vibes that she wanted to date. And I was too intimidated. And, you always think about those times in your life, and you go, I wonder what would happen if I just said, hey, would you like to get food with me sometime? Would it have been you think about it and you go, I bet we could have dated, or you would have done it, and then she said no, and then reported you for sexual harassment to Office Depot, and then you go, oh, God, I really read that wrong, huh? But overall, I had so much fun working at Office Depot. Later, in the Charleston Office Depot, I worked there for a short time, and then I got the job at Hyman's, and I was working Hyman's and Office Depot together, doing 7 days a week at first because I was just food running. And I remember going out with my buddy Joey, my friend from Alabama. We went out to a place called The Plex in Charleston, and it was an old movie theater, and they had opened up several of the theater rooms to different bars. They had like a country bar and a hip-hop bar, and I remember me and Joey went there and just got hammered. And then me and Joey got into a fight at Waffle House, and Joey called a cab and left me there. And then when he left, the people at Waffle House kicked me out. They go, you can't stay here. And so I got my food to go, and then I drove home. I might have ate the food in the parking lot first, but I was basically blacked out, and I drove home. And then the next day I called in sick to Office Depot, and then they had a meeting with me. This was after I'd already been named Employee of the Month. They had a meeting with me, and they go, and I had another friend that worked there named Joey. He was one of the managers. Later, he told me, he goes, that was really too serious. But they set me down in there, and they go, we really took a chance on you, accepting you here, and it was like, okay, guys, yeah, I messed up, okay? But you've already named me Employee of the Month. I obviously really paid off. It really paid off. Ricky, the one-leg guy that was a manager at the Opelika Office Depot, his sister, Tammy, worked at the Charleston Office Depot when I worked there. The Charleston Office Depot was fun, too. I really liked it, except everybody was old, and I really needed friends, and I couldn't find any friends. Joey wanted to be my friend, but Joey was into, doing activities, and I was trying to be an alcoholic, so I was a young, budding alcoholic, so I needed to get myself into the restaurant industry. so I could find other degenerates like myself. But Joey was a good dude. We did play softball one day. I may have some of these pictures. I'll try to share them. I've tried. The problem is that I have a social media team, and I just send them this video, and then I send them the audio, and they match it up, and then they post it. And I'll be like, oh, here's some pictures and some videos to add in too. And I go, but I don't know where. I don't know where to put it. So I got to find time codes and stuff like that. I really could use a producer, and that's something that I would like to get into at some point. But the problem with the producer is you got to schedule things out. And it's like yesterday, I'm doing this on Wednesday, and I'd like to record on Tuesdays. But it's like I traveled all weekend. I was tired when I came home on Sunday. And then Monday I did a podcast before Nateland, and then I did Nateland. And then yesterday I had a bunch of radio to do, and then I'm doing an NPR thing. So I had to do a pre-interview for that. So I was just like, I was so talked out. Today I feel better. I'm on a new diet routine. I think that's it for Office Depot stuff. I mean, eventually I got the job working at Spectracide, and, the Office Depot days were over. I put in my 2 weeks, and I sailed on out of there, and it was done. There are more details, I'm sure. I might have even bored you with a lot of those details. But I've been wanting to talk about my journey in Office Depot for a while, because I know I really detailed Spectracide. I detailed pretty detailed with Hyman's, and I just don't know that I ever really got into Office Depot in that way, but maybe I did. I've been doing this podcast since 2017, and that's pretty mind-blowing. Now, I take breaks. Oftentimes, I take extended breaks, but I've been doing it for a really long time, and so that was frustrating to me. One of the emails I got about what I talked about last week was the person said, I've been listening to you since the beginning, but I'm done now because you said Charlie Kirk was a good Christian man. And I was like, wow, that's pretty shocking. You've listened to me for 8 years. For 8 years, I've given you free content. And other than a short stint where I tried to have a candle company as my sponsor, other than that little short 2 or 3 episode thing where I tried to have candles as a sponsor, I've never tried to sell you anything. I will talk about buying tickets to my shows, maybe even talk about some merch that I have, but it's all free content. If you have YouTube Premium, you don't even get an ad, and I've never had ads on my audio stuff. And it's like, I mention one thing that you don't like, and you're out now. You're like, I'm out. And I was just like, I was pretty blown away by it. I was like, that is really wild. And then they also go on to say, oh, we know you based on you saying you like him, you probably like this person and this person and this person. And that is the problem with everything in our country now, is we have decided that everything is this or that. Everything is right or left. It's one or the other. There is no nuance to anything. It's like we've decided that if you like this person, then you must like these other people, and you must like every single thing they've ever said. And it's just not true. No one lives this way. No one is like this. If you are like this, then you need to, seek a way to, find more nuance. I've always said, I'm only for the Bible. I'm only for the Bible. I'm for Jesus. That's what I support. There are people that I like. There are people that I don't like. There are people that I like, but I don't like things they've said and done. There are people that I don't like, but I've liked some things they've said and done. We can't live in a way that says, if you're this, then you must believe all these things, and because you believe those things, I hate you. Because there are people that I know personally, there are people that I watch online where they believe things that I don't like. I go, I don't like this, and I think it's, in my head, I go, I think it's bad that you believe this, or I think it's bad that you live this way. But that doesn't make me hate the person. I don't even necessarily hate the action. I'm just saying I don't care for this. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay if there are things that I like and things that I, support, I guess. People love to say that. You support this. And I go, realistically, I don't really support anything but my wife and children. To me, support means give money to, and I'm like, I don't really support anything. I got some charities that I'll donate to, or maybe if somebody's selling a product and I like that, I will buy from them. But generally speaking, I don't support anyone, especially politicians. I have politicians that at least the things they say I agree with more than other politicians, but most of the time politicians are just saying what they think we want to hear. They've mastered the art of being like, what do these people want to hear? Yes, that's what I'll say to them. I think we would all be better suited if we just decided what we wanted as a people. And I think we could find more common ground if we said, these are the things we'd like, rather than we support this person because they say this. And so if you're, I am never the kind of person that's going to be like, well, see ya. If you don't like what I'm saying, get out of here. Because I don't want you to be that kind of person. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. But if you don't, well, that's okay. I mean, I hope that you do find Jesus, because I in the end, I don't think it's okay. But it's okay that, we don't agree in that area. You're free to believe whatever you want to believe. That's the beautiful thing about at least the foundation of our country. And that's another thing. People like to get into arguments of like, oh, that's not always what it's been. And it's like, well, that's what we want. I mean, that's the country that we want, is that everybody can believe what they want to believe, and it's okay. As long as you're not forcing that on other people, it's okay. But it is wild to me that it's not wild to me that you would stop listening to me because you're bored with what I'm talking about, or because you've listened to me for long. Listen, I got podcasts that I love that I stopped listening to because I get bored. I got to switch it up. I got to find something else. And that's okay. People can stop listening to me for whatever reason you want. But it is wild to me that you would spend that much time listening to the podcast and then you're done because I talked about someone that you don't like. And I asked them, what do they think a good Christian is? And, they said, and I don't remember their answer. I should have saved the email, but the answer is not what I believe a good Christian is. I believe a good Christian is not just someone who's just supposed to be nice to people, just going around being nice to everyone. A Christian is someone who should be a disciple for Jesus and should be trying to help other people find Jesus and find that peace and happiness that we find with Jesus, and also trying to help them get into heaven. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the goal. That earth is not our home, that heaven is our home. I didn't talk about where I was this weekend, and I'm sorry about that. I'll tell you, I was in Reading, Pennsylvania, and it was a great time. I loved it. I love the shows. I appreciate you guys. If you've made it this far through my last little piece of ranting, I appreciate you. But I loved Reading, Pennsylvania. The show was really fun. I didn't get to see much of the city, and I was not feeling good in my stomach. I do feel better today, but I was not feeling good, so I didn't even get to enjoy any of the food there. I ate sushi from a Whole Foods in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and then we drove down to Reading, and I ate some grapes in the green room. And then I went to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and had a great time there. Really loved the show. I thought it was a lot of fun. I also didn't see any of Wilkes-Barre. I stayed at my hotel. I had cigars with my friend Derek Humphrey after at the hotel both nights. And we had a lot of fun. Derek did great. I enjoyed my shows. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys listening to my podcast. I appreciate you buying tickets to see my shows. I cannot do this without you, and I appreciate it. I appreciate, I just appreciate you listening to this stuff. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy who never thought he would make it this far in comedy. I used to work at Office Depot, and I used to grind away in there. I was going to make a career out of Office Depot. So, but I found a place in comedy, and I appreciate you guys. We're having a good time.